like I'm actually expecting like documents that why those manuscripts are not like that Christians have the original manuscripts.
Okay, what original?
Like,
there is no original of any book prior to the printing press. We have copies that are old and close, that are accurate. So what original? There is original of nothing. There's no original Quran, no original Mark. There's no books of antiquity prior to the printing press has the original survived. You don't even have the original of Homer's Iliad or Odessa or Plato or There is no original of anything. That's how nature works. That's how history works. Do you mean I want ancient copies and plentiful copies?
Yes. That's what I meant.
Well, like they're all around you, buddy. You just said over 25,000
Christian sources, and I don't know which way to go.
Well, I mean, which way to go is, even you've heard Bart Ehrman. Has Bart Ehrman not written books telling you what Mark wrote and Paul wrote?
Yeah, he did.
Can I ask you a question? How does he know what Paul wrote and Mark wrote if he doesn't trust that the copies we have are accurate copies that preserve what they wrote?
It's a logical question.
Okay, you understand when he writes a book, and I have his books, I quote him, I use him. He says how Jesus became God. And he tells you, Paul believed this, and Paul said this. That means he's admitting to you we have plentiful copies that are accurate, that we can trust to tell us what Paul wrote. Because if he didn't think the copies accurately preserve what Paul wrote, then he can't tell you what Paul said.
Yeah.
So then even your Bart Ehrman is a witness to you that we have enough copies that are old and plentiful copies in various languages that virtually agree with one another, and even citations from the fathers that tell you that when you pick up Mark, it's based on plentiful copies that preserve the original so you can know what Mark wrote and not doubt it. That's why he can write books telling you. And the historical Jesus said this. Well, how do you know that? Oh, because when we look at Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John and apply the historical method, the criteria for historicity, we can tell. But wait, you don't have the originals, right? No. But we have enough copies to tell us what Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John wrote. Oh, I see. See, that's how it works for any document.
So is it like assumption? You can say that? Like,
no, it's not an assumption. It's just being honest to evidence. If your argument is I have to have an original, then you can't trust anything in history. We're agnostic about everything, not just religion. You can't tell me about any exploits of any emperor, of any kingdom, of any king. You can't tell me about the Caesars. You can't tell me about Homer and what you can't tell me anything because we don't have originals. But if you're not a hyper skeptic and you're fair and use historical method.
If you watch my debate with Christian Prince, you will see that I have accepted, I have been honest, I have been, I haven't been double standard with him.
Sure, no, I'm not saying, brother, I'm not saying you're not. I'm saying if you are, I'm speaking generally. If you're not hyper skeptical and you are fair in using the historical criteria of how you can determine whether something likely happened and most likely happened, historical method that they employ, then the Gospels will pass with flying colors. They have been preserved and can tell you what the historical Jesus said. So that's my point. If you're consistent, not saying you, saying generally, again, the Gospels and the writings of the New Testament are the best attested books of antiquity because they have more copies in various languages than any book from that period, even more so than the Quran. These are just facts. So if I'm going to question the New Testament books, then I got to be agnostic about Nero, about Augustus Caesar, about Roman history, about Alexander the Great, Grecian history, Babylonian history, and Islamic history. I got to be a skeptic about all of it and just ignore the past and have nothing to do with the past because of this attitude. But there's no one that is a serious scholar and historian that takes it to that point.
Okay, I get your point.